Hi everybody, welcome back to another installment of Conversations in Wire with me, your host, James Browning. I'm a sales representative here at the SoftFlex Company. We are a jewelry wire manufacturer based out of sunny Sonoma, California. We do have a gallery that's open every Wednesdays and Thursdays, and we would love to see you stop by if you're in our area. Today we're going to be doing another technique using the Lazee Daizee. We did it before with just a regular stitch. Now we're going to try the double stitch. It just makes a more dense piece than in the other one, so we'll get a close-up of that and we'll take a look at how to do that. We're actually just going to make the technique video today. We're not actually going to get into how to make a bracelet or anything like that, because we did talk about finishing off in the previous video. So the link to that should be in the comments below. So we're just going to show you how to do this weave, and we'll try and make this a shorter video. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, thank you so much for joining me today. So this is called the double Viking knit stitch. If you can see, it's got a really tight weave, kind of dense. Looks really nice. These are the wrapped coil end caps that the instructions are actually in the kit itself. So for comparison, this is the single knit. See how much more open that is. Now I did use a smaller gauge for this one, so that is going to add to the look as well. This was made with 24 gauge, this was made with 26 gauge. So we're going to be working on this today, and let's talk about what we're going to need. So first we're going to need the Lazee Daizee, and you can get this on our website, www.softflex.com. It comes with the Lazee Daizee tool, a small tack, and instructions. Now for the double stitch, you really do want to hang on to that tack, because for some odd reason I've been using it like every single time I have to do a stitch, so keep a hold of that. Other tools you're going to need wire cutters, you're going to need your nylon jaw wire straighteners, and some sort of pliers, so you straight nose, chain nose, round nose, whatever you need to hang on to your wire when you're either drawing it through the final piece, the draw plate, or when you're using the straighteners. So we're going to use 26 gauge bare copper. I like the bare copper just because you can use that liver sulfur patina. It'll naturally darken with age. So I like playing with it. But we do have non-tarnished copper. We have already antiqued copper. So there's lots of different options when it comes to wire. You can buy wire on our website as well, which links to the tools and our website will be listed in the comments below or in the description. And as always, if you like my videos, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our link, leave a comment if you have any questions or suggestions. I always try and get to those as soon as I can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out about 24 to 36 inches. You don't want too much, simply because it starts to get out of hand. So, but you do want enough to make at least a couple of rows. So at least 24 inches, but no more than 36, because then it gets crazy. All right. So on the Lazee Daizee, there's two parts. Ooh, there we go. The top part, which has the daisy in it, has 6 holes in it, and you can use however many holes you want. I always just use the 6 because it makes it easier to watch what I'm doing and make sure I don't get too lost, but you can get different looks by using different holes. On the Lazee Daizee shaft itself, you'll find 2 holes. One of them is higher than the other. That's the one that we're going to face ourselves. And we're going to insert the wire, and we're going to put about an inch, inch and a half. I'm going to hold it down and try not to pull it out like I just did. Let's try that again. Alright, got a good grip on it. So I'm taking my wire and I'm going to go through the first hole that's behind the first pedal that's by my hole there. Okay, and I'm just going to bring it down and pull it back. So the next one is kind of tricky. Kind of hold on to this loop because we don't want it to get out of control. We're going to take our next hole here and I'm going to put my wire in, and I'm always going to put it in from the right to the left, unless you're left-handed, and then you always go from left to right. But the goal here is to make our loop so that the bottom of the loop ends where this little line is. So this is going to be our starting loops. So do it again, left to right, I'm sorry, right to left, goodness. All right, and then kind of holding down those loops so that they don't accidentally shorten each other. This is how you keep your lines right. It's all about controlling your wire. Now, if you watched the other video about the Lazee Daizee, this is exactly the same. You're going to start just like you would on a normal stitch. Same setup. However, the difference is that we're going to kind of double up on our stitches. Alright, okay, so the first row is done. Then we're back to our first stitch here where the line comes out. And I'm going to take my wire, and do you see where the X is here? There it is. We're going to take our wire, we're going to go behind the X and pull our wire. And I'm just going to make a nice, neat little loop there. And I'm just going to do that behind all the other ones. Now we're just going behind one loop at a time. And then when I draw up my loop, I kind of want my loops to be the same size. And I'm trying to aim for my loops to land on the little hex thing. See, if you look, it's like a pencil. When you technically can do Viking knit on a pencil, but the setup is harder, which is why I like the Lazee Daizee. Because there's no extra setup, you just start weaving. And just so that you don't get too anxiety ridden, your loops can be a little random for the first couple of rows because you can always cut those off. Plus, when you draw down your finished piece, a lot of those mistakes and wiggly lines and stuff will kind of get corrected. Okay, so now we have 2 rows of loops. Now, to start the double stitch, I actually need 3 rows because we're going to go up an extra row to get that started. So we're going to go behind our loop here where the X is, just like we have been, but this is going to start looking a little different because we're going behind the smaller loops now. And this is where I use my tack a lot to kind of open up the back of those loops right there so we can get in easier. This is a fun project to do while you're watching TV or listening to your favorite audiobook. I currently am listening to Harry Potter. I'm on book 5. And I just really love the audiobook version because it gets me everything that reading the book does because it's unabridged, but it also has great voice actors, so it brings to life all of those characters. All right, so it looks like we are back. And so now we have 3 rows. This is technically starting a row. To make this easier to look at, I'm going to add one more regular row. You don't have to, you can actually start right now to add your double stitch, but because I just want it to be really easy to see, I'm going to add one more regular. And sometimes you don't have to if you're lucky. Use the pin to lift it up. They say in the tutorials that I was looking at that if you keep your lines on top of the ridges, that it makes it easier for your wire to go behind the loops. And that's kind of a sometimes thing. Not always, and especially not necessarily with the double stitch, because you are creating a very tight weave, which is why smaller gauges of wire work better for the double weave, because it just gets way too thick and you can't draw it down very much if you use too heavy of a gauge. Okay, so we've got three rows. Now I'm just going to take care of this part right now so I don't forget. I'm going to take this off and get the anchor wires taken care of. Okay. With the anchor wires, you can actually start weaving them in. So this was the anchor wire, and this is our weaving wire. So on the next stitch, we can go behind that wire, and then it'll start weaving in. So this is where this becomes the double stitch. So if we see one loop, we're going to go up a little closer so you can see it better. We have one loop here, and then we have one loop here. So we're going to go behind the X of the top loop. So I'm going to get my pin back here. We're going to go. Let me see if I can get this to stop focusing on those things. There. Alright, and we're going to draw it down like we did the before. But now we have basically 2 loops in one spot. Alright, so let's do it again. There's 1, 2 loops. We're going to go behind that second loop there. Right. Right. Oh, my wire is too wobbly. Okay. So we're going to go right through there. You see how it's starting to take that double look there? All right, I'm going to drop it down and just weave some. Just watch. And you want to make sure that you're going behind the whole loop, not just going like through the middle of it, because we're going to make it'll be harder to get that double loop look if you go through the middle. Okay, so now we're back to the first part. So we're going to go through, this is where that attaching wire is. So we're going to go behind the wire on the second. So see, there's one and two rows. 1 and 2. And the reason this is such a good thing to do while you're watching TV is because it's pretty mindless. Once you figure out your stitch, then it goes pretty quick. See what I mean about having to go through almost every stitch? So I'm going to pause for a second, take this all the way off again. And I'm going to clip this little piece off so that's not confusing anymore. Now, one of the tips that I saw when this gets a little longer, it'd probably work better, but you can take the end, the tapered end of the Lazee Daizee, and you can push up your, you could push open the weave to make it easier for your wire to go behind those stitches. Okay, so there's 2. Okay, so this looks a little tricky. Looks like part of our loop got kind of pulled up a little, so I'm going to take my pin and just kind of work it down so that I'm going through the correct wires. And this is one of the things that we find on this double stitch, is that because of the nature of the stitch, especially if you're using the tack a lot, the tension gets kind of screwed up and it'll pull your loops in directions you weren't expecting. So it just takes a couple of moments to get your wires pulled apart where they want to be. So I'm going to stop on this for a second and I'm going to go to one that I have been working on for a while. So if you can see, when you get going on this. See how tight those weaves are. It almost looks like a herringbone stitch. I'm going to pull this and show you how to add wire to this, just because, I mean, it's the same as the other one, but it's good to review. So we're looking for the higher hole. We're going to put that higher hole right underneath where we ended. So that hole goes right there. And we're going to get some more wire. And I'm just going to take a moment to straighten this wire, just because, especially when you have small holes to go through, it's really good to have a nice smooth wire to go through. Okay, so there's our end piece. So we're going to go right through, come on, go right through. There's like a little cross between one loop. Let's see if I can point it. It's like right in there. We're gonna stick our hole right through there. All right, just pull through about an inch, inch and a half, hold it down, and continue your weave. And making sure that you are looking at these little lines here. We're going up two. That's what makes this the double stitch, because basically we are doubling up a loop on each loop. Now when you add wire, you want to go all the way around once. So total of 6 loops. And then once you have that that tail end that you ended with captured, you can pull this off and get your ends together, which makes it easier to weave them in. So you just kind of wiggle it. Sometimes it's easier to pull that out so that it comes out of the hole without much problems. Okay, so now you have both of your ends chilling out together here. And here's your weaver. So we'll put this back on. It doesn't matter when you put it back on where it goes, but now would be a good time to stretch out. Like I was telling you, you just kind of push that in and it will open up the end as far as it can, generally. Okay, put this back on and continue to weave. So the magic of YouTube, I think I'll probably, well, actually, since we're not really doing a project, I might just do a couple more rows so you can see how it's done. I'm just straightening my wire right now. And then we'll clip it off. And I'll show you how to draw it through the draw plate so you can see the before and after. So just so you can see it a little bit better up close, as long as it doesn't fuzz out on me, we're going through 2 rows and is pulling it tight. When I do my pen, I find those 2. Now this is getting these ends tied in. You want to gotta go under and then find that exit hole so that basically you're wrapping up that end behind your loop. Because what we don't want to do when we are drawing this down is have those ends get pulled out or pulled in some random direction and cause a weird looking knot. Alright, so 1, 2 rows. And if you can do this with your wire without having to use the tack, that's great. Probably is easier that way, so it doesn't stretch the wires where it doesn't want to go. But this, for some odd reason, has not been that easy for me to do. So I have been using the tack. Another thing that you want to watch for is that you're not just going back and putting it through the same loop. So if you see your loop tail right here, then that means you're in the wrong hole. So turn it a little. Go to the next one. This one got too tight together. Once you've done about 3 rows of capturing those end pieces, you can clip those right off. I think this is row 2. I don't know if you guys can hear all the noise when I'm quiet, and I apologize, but we have, we're kind of in an industrial area, and we have a neighbor on both sides of us. And then we have our upstairs customer service department. So it's a bit noisy, but I hope everybody can hear okay. We are almost back. You know, sometimes what I do is I do the wrong row. Just gotta watch what you're doing and go slow and no need to rush. It's like I always say. This is creativity. If you start getting into, you know, where you have to rush to get production done, I don't see how that's fun. Making should be fun and peaceful. Alright, so here's our last little pickup of these tails here. Okay, so I'm just going to take this off. Bloop. And clip these off. You want to make sure you clip them on the inside so that the sharp bits don't come out. Actually, trim them a little closer. Just watch which one you're trimming so you don't end up trimming your weaver. So yeah, and you can continue to weave. I'm going to go ahead and stop. I'll finish up this wire off camera and then we'll talk about pulling it and drawing it down through the draw plate. Alright, be right back. Okay, so we're back. It looks like I got just a little bit more on there. So we're going to do the ending off now. You can take your piece and kind of push it up and you'll get those loops at the very top. And you just take your cutters and you just clip them open, every one of them. This is a little unnerving the first time you do it because you'll see things start to come off. But don't panic. Basically just is links that are not necessary anymore. You've cut them and so they're going to fall off. So there should only be one tail end left on either end. And you should have 6 loops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Now I just kind of tuck this down on the inside if possible. Don't pull on it too hard because you will shrink. You'll shrink your loop. Okay, so this is where we're going to find some scrap wire. I have some 18 gauge. I'm just going to cut maybe like a foot. You don't have to use 18 gauge. Basically just want something a little longer than what you are working with on your Lazee Daizee. And I'm just making 3 links about 4 inches. And I'm going to thread them through the loops. So, like right across from each other. And you know what? This is a very tough 18 gauge. So maybe if it's your first time, go with a 20 gauge or 22. Just so long as it's bigger than what you're working with. And you're going to want to kind of hold on to it because they will fall out otherwise. What we're doing is we are making the handle to pull your work through. Okay. I can take, if you have 2 pliers, this works better, but see, we have a nice little handle. It definitely, for ease sake, I would go with maybe a 20 or 22 gauge scrap wire to get these handles made, because 18 is really tough. Okay, so we're going to find the biggest hole, and we're going to put our handle in first, and then we're going to take our pliers and grab those wires and just pull it through. It's a little tough, but you can already see that it's squishing down and it's changing that look. I like to go through the same hole a couple of times just to make sure that we're kind of even before we go to the next hole. There. Now, my wire has some dark stuff because that's where it's oxidized, but if I wanted this bright color back, all I'd have to do is throw it in some vinegar. Or you could use some liver of sulfur on it and kind of scrape down the high points. I'm just going to go through a couple more times to see if I can get those lines to even out. Yeah, see? So that's one loop on one loop. And that's 2 loops. Okay? So, and then all you have to do is just cut off your lead wires. And finish it off however you like. Because these are kind of raw-ended, I would suggest a toggle or a cap, bead cap, cone, whatever. The other thing I've seen, if you draw it down enough so that it's pretty flexible, you can kind of make a little earring out of them. This is not flexible enough. We'd have to work it a little bit. But I have seen that, maybe with a smaller gauge it's more flexible. I mean, there's a lot you can do with Viking knit. It's hollow, so you can put beads in it, or you can put like a different color chain maybe to accent whatever is underneath. You could make 2 of these and layer them in 2 different colors. That'd be interesting. Just play with it. It's a technique that's great to make chain with for your finished pieces, but there's so much else you can do with it. So I say play with it, enjoy, have fun. Thanks again for joining me today. I really enjoy hanging out with you guys. And this has been another demonstration of the Lazee Daizee Viking knitting tool. And like I said earlier, go ahead and subscribe, hit like, you know, all the regular YouTube stuff. But I've had a great time today, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.